everyone. Today's video is titled How a Trump Presidency 2.0 Will Affect Real Estate. So obviously it's been the talk of the town for the past week and a half, historic presidential election. We want to see how will some of the policies that Trump has proposed will affect real estate and the real estate market. There's a lot to unpack. And what I want to go through is what are some of the things to look out for? We don't have a crystal ball, even if we know some of the policies that are coming out. We don't necessarily know how they will affect the housing market, but we can gauge some ideas based on previous historic events and how they could relate to the economy. So let's dive straight into it. First one we have is potentially higher mortgage rates for longer. Now, this might be a surprising one because naturally a Republican president is more pro-business, and that leads to more business being able to be done, lower interest rates, lower mortgage rates. However, as we've seen in the past couple of months, mortgage rates have actually been going up, and that is contrary to the interest rates from the Fed being reduced by 0.75 points now. And part of the reason is because mortgage rates relate not directly to what the Fed determines, but to bond yields and the treasury market. And if you look at the treasury market, they've actually been more correlated to the betting market for Trump winning the presidency. As the betting markets swung in his favor, the bond market has also gone up. So that is why we're seeing higher mortgage rates despite interest rates from the Fed actually being cut. This is seen for a number of reasons. A lot of Trump's policy has been seen as inflationary. So we will continue to monitor that and how that plays out, but that isn't probably a bit of a contrarian view of what most people would think a Trump presidency would bring. The next one we're talking about is a backlog of foreclosures. So I was one of these people. I expected a lot more foreclosures to have happened in the past year or two. We did have some economic hurt, some high inflation. However, the Biden-Harris administration has been very hands-on with trying to control foreclosures. They put in laws to allow people who are going into foreclosure some extra time and perhaps resources as well to not lose their homes. We're expecting a Republican presidency, House, and Senate to be a lot more hands-off when it comes to foreclosures. Currently, there are 55% of would-be foreclosures are being staved off by some of these forbearance laws that were previously enacted for the pandemic, but have been extended and continued by the Biden-Harris administration. So if these are rolled back and the federal government takes a more hands-off approach, we could see a huge backlog of foreclosures start to hit the market, and that'll obviously bring down prices with it. So definitely look out for that. If there is sign that that'll be something that President Trump does early in his administration, there could be a lot of foreclosures on the horizon. Next is immigration policy and mass deportations. So obviously this has been one of the key talking points, if not the key talking point of the election campaign. Immigration policy, mass deportations, deporting illegal immigrants. No one knows exactly how this will play out, maybe not even Trump himself. But how will this affect the housing market? This is purely speculative, but depending on how quickly or how slowly they roll this out, to what extent they roll it out, could have major impacts one way or another. But if we think about it logically, if you brought in 15 to 20 million illegal immigrants to the country, they need housing. Typically, they're not going to take up as much housing as the regular American. However, there is another side to that where a lot of these immigrants are responsible for construction jobs. So on one hand, you have they are taking up some of the housing that's available out there, which is of course putting some pressures on supply. But at the same time, a lot of them work in the construction industry, and a mass deportation could kind of negate these effects. Yeah, there might be less demand for housing because you don't have as many people to house. But at the same time, some of these construction workers could go away, and that could slow down the process of developing affordable housing, which is a real big problem in this country. So again, a lot of it will come down to how it's rolled out. Is it eased in? Is it going to be all at once? And no one really knows, to be honest, how much this will impact, and it's all speculative, but that is something to watch out for. Next one is privatization of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. So these are the quasi-government entities which are on the secondary loan market. So pretty much how they work, when you go and get a loan, you don't get it from Fannie Mae, you get it from a lender. You talk to a loan officer, they originate a loan for you. They will package up a few of these loans together and then sell them on the secondary market to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. So because these are, as I say, quasi-government agencies, they really have no competition. They have strict regulations that they follow, strict criteria for lending. And when this goes private, that will allow more competition to come into the market. That potentially means that there may be even more flexibility in getting loans. They won't have to follow the strict guidelines of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac as they were government institutions. So again, not exactly sure what effect that will have on the wider economy and the housing market, but that will be a big move. And if you look at the stock market charts of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, they've actually been going up a lot the past week since the Trump election. So that people are seeing that privatization as a real possibility, and it's causing the stock price to go up higher. Good segue into the next one, deregulation. So deregulation is a big one, mostly for development. We talked about before, the lack of affordable housing options out there. This will only come from developing new product. The population is going to continue to increase, whether illegal immigration is curbed or not. We want it to increase. So to house the increase in population, we're going to be reliant on developers, and developers will be more inclined to develop with less regulation. Now, this regulation comes from a wide variety of sources. It could be the county, the local municipalities, the state, the federal government, the EPA. And Trump has spoken about this on a personal standpoint in terms of trying to be a developer. The EPA, not even necessarily blocking specific buildings or developments, but just drawing out the process. And as we know, time kills deals. And if you have a deal that you have to bake in an extra 6 months for permitting and going through the regulatory process, this can upend your deal, or at the very least, add more risk to it. So if we can truncate these development timelines, that means more developers will come in and build product, and hopefully some more affordable product. So that's something to look out for as well. Reverse the $10,000 property tax deduction cap. So if you remember a few years ago, it used to be that all your property taxes were tax deductible. So if you had $50,000 or you had $2,000, it was all tax deductible. Then there was enacted a $10,000 cap, so you could only deduct the first $10,000 of your property taxes on your income tax. In theory, the idea was that for middle and working class, it wouldn't change anything because their property taxes should be below $10,000 anyway. And, for people with larger houses, they could afford to pay the extra taxes, and that would typically, be for big houses that were like $25,000, $30,000 in property taxes. They could afford the bump in tax and their tax rate. But what the actual effect was really state by state. So if you go to California and you're in a working to middle class home, the property taxes may be very high, maybe more than $10,000, even though it's technically a lower level home in that area. That's just because California taxes are very high. Similarly, you could go to Arizona and you could have a pretty large house borderlining a mansion, and the property taxes are very low over there, and it could be $8,000 or $9,000. So you would receive the whole deduction. So that didn't make a lot of sense. That'd be a good move to reverse and get rid of that cap, but that's something to look out for. The last one I have here is preserve the 1031 exchange. There was talk amongst the Democrats of trying to get rid of the 1031 exchange. Obviously, a huge thing in real estate in the United States, where you can sell a property, roll the funds into a larger property, and not really defer that capital gains tax. That would have been a huge shift if they would have got rid of that. But with a Trump presidency, it's almost certain to stay. So that is a positive move. Of course, there's going to be a lot more things that happen, and even just economy wise, that could have a much larger shift on the market than any of the things we've talked about above. But as far as it goes for purely real estate purposes, take a look at these. Let me know if you have any questions or any other factors that we've seen so far that could affect our real estate market going forward. That's all I have for this video. We'll see you next week.